It's time to talk about a Camera Raw, Adobe Camera Raw. Adobe Camera Raw is a plugin in Photoshop and in Bridge. It's a free plugin, but originally was created for editing raw images from cameras. But nowadays you can also edit JPEGs. So you can think of Camera Raw as another approach to editing images, developing images. But first, before we jump into Camera Raw, let me tell you a little bit more about Raw and JPEG. Every SLR camera and mirrorless camera and some compacts can register images not just as JPEGs but also as RAW files. Okay, and when you get to choose, I'm going to tell you some differences between RAW and JPEG. Now, in a nutshell, RAW will be your best option because RAW is the raw data from the camera. Okay, but just to give you a more idea about these different formats, I'm going to tell you some differences between them. So just to compare RAW and JPEG, first we'll start with potential advantages of JPEGs. JPEGs are smaller files. They're typically 2 to 5 megabytes, might be bigger obviously, but typically. And because they're smaller files, you can save more pictures on the memory card. They use less space on a hard drive or on a memory card. RAW files are much bigger. They typically 10 times bigger than JPEGs, but it's because they contain much more information. Because they're bigger, you can take less pictures on the memory card. Now this is potentially an advantage because memory cards are getting bigger and cheaper as well. For example, here in Britain, you can easily buy a very good, say, 32 gigabytes memory card from Lexa or SanDisk or Kingston for less than £20. Okay. Next, JPEGs are viewable in all image software and all different devices. JPEG is a very universal file format. You can use any device, any kind of software to view them. With RAW files, typically proprietary RAW files at least, they will need to be converted to JPEG before you can view them. Your computer or tablet or mobile phone can't open proprietary RAW files. I'll tell you a bit more about proprietary and non-proprietary in the next video. JPEGs are smaller, so you can take more pictures in continuous shooting mode. With the RAW files, because they're larger, the camera memory buffer will fill up quickly. For example, when you look on specifications for cameras, it will say in RAW you can shoot, say, 20 images in one go. With JPEGs, 40, 50 or 60 or even more. Okay? So if you do a lot of high-speed photography where you take loads of pictures in one go, JPEG might be a better option, or getting a very good camera which will allow you to shoot 30, 40 raw images in one go. JPEG is a standard that you'll be able to view in years to come, where RAW is constantly changing, and there are different RAW formats between different camera manufacturers and different cameras. I'm still talking about proprietary RAW, like Canon, Nikon, Sony, Fuji, and so on. Now, when it comes to advantages of RAW, and these are real advantages. With RAW, no image processing is done by the camera. User does it on the computer with software. So you decide how you want to develop images. Well, with JPEGs, image processing like white balance correction, sharpening, noise reduction are done in the camera before image is stored. And you can't control it. Camera is adjusting white balance and sharpening and noise reduction whether you like it or not. You don't have any control. So what it means is that with RAW you are more creative, or you get to be more creative, because when you convert in RAW files you can apply your own settings. With JPEGs you're less creative because decisions are made by the camera and are fixed in JPEG. You can't really change white balance on the camera. You can tweak it in Camera Raw, but you can't change it as such. With the RAW files, that's easy. With RAW, exposure can be adjusted so that areas of burnt out highlights can be corrected. And with JPEGs, burnt out highlights cannot be typically recovered. So when the images are overexposed, or when you have areas within the image that are overexposed, if it's JPEG, there's not much you can do about it. RAW files are lossless. No image data is discarded when saving a raw file. Where with the JPEG, JPEG applies lossy compression. JPEG is what we call a lossy file format, and image data is thrown away to create a smaller file. So JPEG doesn't contain as much information as a raw file. It contains much less information. And finally, JPEGs is only 8-bit per channel. What it means is you only get 256 levels for each primary color. While with the RAW, your RAW files will be 12-bit or 14-bit, depends on the camera, which will give you up to 16,384 different levels for each primary color, which means many more subtle color variations. This is a massive difference, and the images will just look so much better. Okay.